Hey everybody, welcome to the UGASports Live Podcast. My name is Radi Nabulsi. I'm joined by Dayne Young and Jake Roos. Coach Dunn will not be on the show with us today. He has to take his wife to for some medical issues. If you would give her and the Donna family a quick prayer, they could definitely use it. And I know he hates to miss the show. He loves doing the show. At least that's what he tells me, and I'll take him at his word. But right now, our best wishes are with Coach Donna, and it's something that he needs to get taken care of. So, of course, we will do the show without him. And I know that that's the sound of 7,000 people going, nope, screw it, no Donna, I'm out. But stick around because we have a lot to talk about. Georgia's actually scrimmaging. We have 3 or 4 sets of scrimmage notes that we might be able to share with you. And normally those are behind the paywall, but we might bring some of that out for the show. Plus, we've got recruiting to talk about with Jake Roos. And, of course, we have some game times that we can announce. We're starting on. I just put a couple kickoffs on the dog event that we were hearing about, for Arkansas and Auburn. We'll see if those bear out here in a minute. Hopefully, I'm right. I've been wrong in the past, but we do know that the SEC has announced the CBS games. Georgia's going to play at 8:00 against.
Release just came out, Roddy, so you are right.
Am I? Well, hey, hit me up. So what was I right about, Dane?
Everything, Roddy. Georgia will play Arkansas at 4 p.m. on the SEC network. That is Eastern time, obviously. And then the following Saturday, Georgia will play Auburn at Sanford Stadium, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time on ESPN.
There we go. So we now have the first 2 game times, and before I was so rudely interrupted by Dane telling me that I was right, we mentioned that Georgia's going to face Alabama on the CBS game, the one that our own Dave McMahon works every year. He works all the CBS games, the SEC on CBS games. Night game for Georgia Alabama, prime time, 8:00 on CBS, and then of course the standard. I say standard. Their traditional 3:30 CBS game when Georgia faces Florida. So I guess is that 4 game times we have now locked in?
Yes.
So start making your plans. And so far, and again, I'm knocking on wood here, Jake, we saw Auburn have to suspend practices, because of some COVID stuff. We've seen some other schools go online. But for Georgia right now, it seems so far so good. Have you heard anything different? Because I don't want to get too excited. I don't want to be let down.
No, I understand that. No, I think that, I haven't heard anything that leads me to believe anything is going awry. I think that they've, of course, just like everybody else, they've had some guys test positive. They've had some antibody tests come back positive. But I think it's a situation for Georgia where things look like they're moving smoothly. Nobody's sick, they're quarantining when they need to be, and they're able to keep this train moving. And I think for them, a lot of that goes back to the depth that they've been able to put together. I think that even when you have a guy maybe who has to quarantine, whoever that might be, you've got some young, hungry guys waiting in the corner to come in and take those reps. So sounds like everything's going smoothly for the Dogs. And I was really encouraged after that Central Arkansas Austin Peay game that no positive tests came back. So that felt like a win for college football.
In college football right now, though, you don't have to worry as much about positive tests in the moment, it seems like, as you do just agents swooping in to tell these prospects that maybe you should sit out the year and use that as the excuse, because LSU has 5 returning players from their national championship team on the starting 22. Their roster is being ravaged right now.
Yeah, I felt for LSU, to be honest with you. I feel like those guys went through practice and they were like, nah, this isn't going to be like last year. Maybe we should just pull back on it a little bit. So, it's a tough situation for them, and I get it. I get where they're coming from with it. I think that it makes sense for some of those guys. Jamar Chase is a guy who's a lock for the first round. There's no question about that. I think that everybody can understand that decision. And, the rest of these guys, I think if you're probably not where you want to be in terms of the team as a whole, but you feel that you can, spend the year training, not risk injury, maybe it's worth a shot. I don't know. We'll see. I think it's going to really set an interesting precedent moving forward.
I'm wondering, we've got this question that's popped up a bunch of times, does Georgia have anybody planning to opt out? And I was kind of looking over it, and, I asked around over there, and I haven't seen any guys seriously looking into it. Now, if you'd had Isaiah Wilson or Andrew Thomas, guys like that, last year, DeAndre Swift, maybe I could see it, but I just don't. Who am I missing? I mean, I think Jamie Newman wants to make his mark on this team. Eric Stokes, I think, wants to play. Because there's still, I should say there's questions about him, but that's a guy who could definitely move up the charts by playing.
Well, if you look at Georgia's roster, I mean, I think it comes down to the question of, do you have anybody who's just a guaranteed lock first rounder? And I don't see that as the case for Georgia. I think that they've got some guys who could play themselves into that. I think Eric Stokes could get into that conversation. We'll see how Jamari. Yeah, absolutely. Jamari Sawyer maybe with a good year. Boy, how does that affect him? Samir
but
White,
he wouldn't put out because he's never played the position,
Right, exactly.
Right, so you're right about having to play himself into it.
I think mostly for Georgia, that's the concern, or got to be anyway. I just don't see a situation where you're looking around that roster and you say, yeah, this guy is a first-round lock, no question about it. He could step away today, play one game. It doesn't matter. And I think that, honestly, in some senses, Kirby Smart's really lucky to have that because he's not having to deal with those LSU problems.
A lot of other issues to deal with, of course, with the whole COVID thing. And I don't want to have a COVID show. I'm sick to death of talking about it. But, again, I'm scared to let my hopes get up, just because – if you just expect it to all go to hell when everything holds tight and you actually have football games like we saw last Saturday, it feels good. And shout out to Central Arkansas for having to turn around and play again this Thursday. So we still get questions about, hey, do you think the Big Ten will change their mind? What about the Pac-12? I'm not holding my breath, and honestly, I don't care. If they don't play, I hate it for those players, but you just trust that those folks are making the decision that they feel right, and then you trust in Ron Corson and the SEC that they're making the decision that they feel is right. So far, cases look good. Cases going down. Finally, under 2,000 hospitalizations when they've been up to 3,200. I think that's a good thing. Saw a lot of cases pop up at the University of Alabama. Again, makes you nervous, but if everything holds, we shall have football. Now, to me, that's my ham-fisted segue into talking about the last scrimmage that came out. Okay. If you go to UGASports.com, you'll find out that we had at least 3 to possibly more sets of scrimmage notes. Now, this was a closed scrimmage, but luckily we've had some people who were there that told us kind of some of the stuff that went into it. We gave you some actual reports from people that we trust in there, and then we had some people who were there and we passed along their observations. Not to say we don't stand behind their observations, but the ones that we were able to confirm, those are we'll just give them a little bit more gravitas, if you will. Jake, you read through all those insider reports that we had. What was your kind of main takeaway from the scrimmage?
This is really something that Coach has been talking about for a while, but, reared its head again, and you wondered if it would carry over. And I'm still surprised by it. And that's Owen Condon. I think the fact that Owen Condon has that right tackle spot, kind of within his grasp right now, it looks like he's the guy to beat there. Look, when that kid came into the program, that was not what anybody was expecting, especially given the guys that he came in with, the guys that are playing behind him. You're talking about, we were talking, remember, back in December about could Broderick Jones win this job? Could Tate Ratledge win this job? Could some of these super talented freshmen come in and kind of unseat these guys? I think that is a absolute home run for Georgia if that's the case, that Owen Condon's going to be the guy at right tackle. And if he's not, it sure sounds like he's a guy who's done enough to impress these coaches and make an impact that he can fit in somewhere, and at worst maybe be your sixth man on the line. So I think that's huge news for Georgia. I think that helps answer some of the questions surrounding the offensive line. And like I said, like I've been saying for a while now, you had to get some solidity going into this year. You had to get some guys taking reps together. I think it sounds like they're starting to kind of come together, kind of gel as a core, and figure out who's going to be where. I think that's big for Georgia heading into this season.
Dayne, what was your takeaway?
I think, like a lot of fans, I immediately go to quarterback and try to figure out what that situation looks like. And first of all, these quarterbacks aren't dummies. because George Pickens hauled in 2 touchdowns from 2 different quarterbacks. And that tells me if you got George Pickens, throw the guy the damn football. And so, I thought that was a good sign. My personal opinion, I don't think that this is, I don't want to say not competition, but I don't think it's a very close one at this stage. I think Jamie Newman will be the starter for Georgia. I think JT Daniels has too many turnover-worthy plays. We saw that on his tape from Southern Cal. And I think that probably is still the case. I haven't seen practice. I haven't seen the scrimmages. But just based on what I've seen from those 2 history. Again, I think the interesting thing is if Jamie Newman was out, who comes in? Because Dwan Mathis apparently is making a charge.
Yeah, here he's running with the 2s and could definitely be there. And this is a guy with a huge chip on his shoulder. If I'm Dwan Mathis, I see Jake Fromm leave early. I know Stetson Bennett's there. I know Carson Beck's coming in. This has been my team. This is a team I practiced with. I've worked with these wide receivers for, going on 2 years. And then Jamie Newman shows up. You're like, okay, well, you're kind of a graduate senior, graduate transfer. You get your 1 year. I'm just last year finally cleared to play. You and me will go at it. You've got the experience, but I've got the fresh legs and motivation. Then JT Daniels comes in. Now it's like anybody else could have been like, look, the coaches are obviously against me. They don't trust me. They keep bringing in quarterbacks. This isn't fair. That's not the way Dwan Mathis has handled this. And all respect to him for saying, look, damn it, this is my job. I'm going to fight for it. And I don't care that, you were a 5-star and you were behind Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields. I'm Dwan freaking Mathis. We're probably, I think they're like the same age. And, you're coming off an ACL injury. I'm coming off the brain surgery. I'm healed. You're almost healed. Let's go at it. And I think that he's giving JT Daniels as much as he can handle. So I'm hearing very good things about Dwan Mathis and very excited about him. The folks that talk about his arm, and everyone, I know that the knee-jerk reactions go, oh, well, he's a spread quarterback. He can run it. No, the people rave about Dwan Mathis's arm. And I think that if you got a brand new quarterback a new offensive coordinator with no recruiting stories or preconceived notions about this team. So he's seeing JT Daniels and Dwan Mathis and Jamie Newman in that first scrimmage, all seeing what they can do under live fire. Granted, they're not allowed to be hit, but, actually going 1s versus 1s. And I think that Dwan did well. So we're not hearing a whole lot about Carson Beck. We're not hearing a whole lot about Stetson Bennett. I think it's a 3-person race right now amongst those guys. So I'm with you there. I think that the quarterback race, if you will, is very interesting. Jason Butt did a great update yesterday. Go to UGASports.com, check it out. You can read that. And also read his daily recaps. Before we get into some of the other stuff from the scrimmage, and again, we have a lot to talk about. Not a whole lot of passes completed, or at least not a whole long passes completed. Running backs looking fantastic. Georgia's third down defense looking filthy. You got to be excited about that. I was thinking Mark Webb came out and said that he thinks all the guys in the secondary are taking a step forward. It was pretty good secondary last year. So for him to say they're even better this year, that's impressive. But we have a new sponsor I want to introduce. It's Masada Leather and Gifts. I came to Georgia in 1990. Every time I go downtown, I pop my head into Masada Leather. Everybody I know got their Birkenstocks from there. People got their belts from there. They got bags. They are still in business. Irvin has been running that thing since 1975. I was 3 years old. And so, again, it is a Athens institution. They do custom work. They build stuff. Lifetime warranty on something. You buy a bag from them, one of those beautiful leather bags, and you take it out and use it, and you beat it all to heck and back, and it starts to wear on the edges, which will take forever because they're leather. But if they do, if you have any issues, take it back to them. They'll fix it. They have a lifetime warranty on all their stuff. You need belts, they'll build them for you. You need masks, they can handle that. These guys have been taking care of the Athens community. God, how many decades is that? I'm bad at math, but if you need Birkenstocks, if you need some of the messenger bags, pin bags, all the stuff that they build, check out our friends at Masada Leather in Athens. It's just, again, it's an institution. It's almost like here in the Georgia Theater is now sponsoring your show. I'm just very excited about having them on because, again, I know what they've meant to this community. And, the fact that in troubling times that they're willing to come on and be a sponsor of our show means a lot to us. So thank you, Irvin. Thank you, Messiah Leather. And folks, when you go in there, let them know that UGASports.com sent you.
I was going to say, too, just do yourself the favor just to pop in your head in there. It just smells so good in Masada.
Hey, you know what also smells good is we have this dark chicken plates brought over to me. I got the green beans and the mashed potatoes, but this is one of Jake's favorites, the dark meat fried chicken here, the thigh, the leg.
I do love it.
Suffer, Jake. Just suffer.
I wanted to talk, Radi, a little bit actually about what you said about Dwan, and I think that it's an interesting situation with Dwan Mathis because coming out of high school, you probably had a really good sense of what JT Daniels could do as a quarterback.
Yeah.
That was not the case with Dwan Mathis. That was not – people were really not sure, is this guy a quarterback or not? It felt like he had the upside. It felt like he had the arm. But was he going to be able to put it all together? In that respect, I think that you're seeing a guy who has, I guess, a proven commodity versus a ceiling, in this case. I think that you're seeing Dwan sort of being able to deliver on some of the things that people always wondered, is this in the back of this guy's game? And I think that another thing, too, that's really important to mention, you talked about him kind of being around the program. I mean, we've seen players come out and be vocal on Twitter, with their support for Dwan Mathis. And I think that mark of confidence from those guys is really impactful and something that, probably should not be discounted. It seems like he's got great relationships with all those guys. Obviously in an era of unfamiliarity, when you're turning away from a guy like Jake Fromm, who was the quintessential leader for 3 years, some of that familiarity I think can really help. And it sure seems like Dwan brings that to the table.
Thoughts, Dane?
I'm sorry?
What were your thoughts, Dane?
He asked for my thoughts. Dwan Mathis is a favorite on the team. And I think because of what he overcame with that injury, he's just really easy to root for. And you see the perseverance that he had. So I think the guys on the team really want him to do well and have a chance to shine on the field. And, they don't want his tenure at Georgia to kind of feel like he didn't get the chance that his talent probably would have earned otherwise. And so, it's going to be a stiff competition at Georgia quarterback this year and going forward because, all you're doing is adding Brock Vandegrift to the mix next year, which makes it even crazier. But, one of the other things that from the observations that stuck out to me, we heard a lot about Dominic Blaylock, and we've had questions about how is his injury going to affect the wide receiver depth chart. What I had not considered is how his injury affects the returning game, because Dominic Blaylock was going to be right there in the mix to return kicks and punts. So obviously Kearis Jackson is probably getting a look. He's done it a little bit. But seeing Tyreek Stevenson at potential there, now that was intriguing to me.
That's a pretty good note there that somebody put on the board.
I like that a lot, though, because
yes.
Tyreek was a guy that, and even going into this year with Mark Webb perceived to be the nickel starter, you want to figure out a way to utilize a kid like Tyreek. He's got to get snaps. He's good enough to do it. I mean, he's going to make an impact one way or another. So I think that's very smart of Georgia to be looking at him in that respect, because he was a guy back in high school who could really flip the field when he caught an interception. He could easily, turn it back 50, 60 yards and set the offense up well.
That also tells you who's impressing Scott Cochran right now, right? Is that Tyreek Stevenson is getting out there with, he's getting yelled at and loving it.
Well, not only that, we know that Tyreek has that ability. I've been told by multiple people that Tyreek, maybe the best player on defense. And I'm like, it seems a bit reach when you look at, Nolan Smith and Azeez Ojulari and Adam Anderson, all these high-ranked guys, Jordan Davis, all SEC performer, and, just a couple, Tyson Campbell and Eric Stokes. You're like, wait a minute, Tyreek Stevenson? Again, he's young, but I'm told that when all's said and done, in Tyreek Stevenson, you could have another DeAndre Baker, a guy who could push for national awards, not just, all SEC. So just I think it's a great idea to get him out there. I also want to bring up the fact that we heard that Jermaine Burton was back there trying to catch a few punts. So I thought that was kind of interesting, when it comes to me, we cover, as I say, Jake covers all these great athletes, when they're in high school, and you see a lot of the coaches are smart. They get their best players in the positions to make, to change the outcome of the game. So a lot of times you'll see the best defensive back or the best wide receiver is also your return guy. And they always talk about, oh yeah, Georgia's looking at me as a returner, as a, special teams player as well. And then they get to Georgia and you find out that a lot of them can't do it at this level. Those punts they hang in the air a lot longer. They shift. They move with the wind a lot more. It is hard to judge those punts. It is hard to return a kick, into the teeth. Think about it. If you're trying to return a kick against Georgia, you have Trayvon Walker flying down,
Those guys at this level are a little bit faster bearing down on you.
Yeah. You got to think, oh, hey, look, here comes Rion Davis. Here comes Nate McBride. Here comes Trayvon Walker, headhunters, absolute headhunters coming down. And it to your point, having a Don Blaylock back there who is calm and decisive, and that's a huge loss for Georgia, not only as, the team's second leading wide receiver, but also a returner. But having Kyrus Jackson back there, I think, is smart, very smart. And then I like the idea of Tariq Stevenson, from, as Jake says, getting that getting your playmaker on the field. But I think it's a vote of confidence. For Jermaine Burton to also be back there, I think that's kind of big.
Well, you mentioned Radi, the versatility of Tariq Stevenson, and people thinking that he could potentially be the best player on the defense. I can see where they're coming from. He is young, and I think he's still got time to develop, but he's very much in line, I think, physically and from a skill set of what the NFL is moving toward, which is these positionless defenders. You're talking about guys like Roquan Smith. I'm not saying that he's Roquan right now, but, similar build, flies around. You can put him at nickel. You can put him at corner if you need to. He could certainly play linebacker. He's fast enough to get in there and disrupt a pass if you want to do a corner blitz or something like that. So he's a guy who brings all of that to the table. I could definitely see why people are high on Tyreek, because he's definitely got all of those tools at his disposal.
And you look at what Kirby Smart did at Alabama. He's been trying to find his Minkah Fitzpatrick that you can line up literally anywhere on the defense, and it's going to be productive. Or if you look at, I think Cam Chancellor with the Seahawks a few years ago was that guy in the NFL. And Tyreek Stevenson can do it. He could play any position across the board at defensive back. That's 6 spots that he could play and thrive in. And then, he could do some stuff coming. He was a blitzer for Georgia late in the season, when Georgia did not blitz defensive backs very much, except for Eric Stokes against Tennessee.
Yeah, you got to have a lot of faith in not only the guys behind you, but that he can disrupt the play, because once you take him out of that secondary, somebody's open, So you were expecting him to affect the play in some manner, and Tariq did. So that was a great point. Let's see, in the practice notes we put up, we also heard great things about Azeez Ojulari and Jermaine Johnson. Said we were told that Georgia's third down packages, and we won't explain everything we heard about them, but let's just say, I used the word filthy earlier. They're going to bring some heat. The third down packages are very impressive, and they were very impressive last year. But from what we've seen, they're improved this year. I think that when you have Azeez, think about it, this is only his second year. Last year he was a redshirt freshman, was phenomenal. Jermaine Johnson really blowing up, has put on some muscle mass, looks great. Can definitely see him up making some headway. And then, of course, that on Friday we put out the 2 deep depth chart in the interior line for Georgia, the interior defense. When you said, okay, well, you got Trayvon Walker, Jordan Davis, Tramel Walther, Devontae out there.
Wyatt.
I also think, who else was on that? We had 6 guys that we named, and all of a sudden, Jalen Carter, who's the video leaked out of him going up against Trey. I'm losing my name. Trey Hill. And you saw that video come out, and finally, Georgia's 2 deep on the defensive line is what Kirby Smart's been expecting since he got here. What Georgia did not have for those years when they had the great offenses, that could score a lot of points. They just didn't have the strong defenses. Now they've got that interior that's strong. your two outside linebacker spots are just bringing all sorts of heat. You have one of the deepest secondaries in the nation. There's a reason you had the number one defense last year. You lost a lot of those guys, but a lot of them are back. So you got to be really excited about it. But two of the guys that I kept hearing a lot about were Jermaine Johnson and Azeez Ojulari. The other guy and I'm kind of building in a long roundabout way on your point there, Jake, a guy who can do a lot, who can be inserted all over the place, Nakobe Dean. We heard a lot of good things about Nakobe Dean as well. And I'm thinking that this may be one of the fastest defenses we've seen in a long time at Georgia. This isn't you think of those big behemoths in the middle, but your outside linebackers and secondary. I mean, I've been covering a long time, but I don't know that I can recall a defense that's quite this fast. Or am I wrong?
No, I think that you make some great points. I mean, you've got guys who are going to be flying all over the place. And, Nakobe, again, you're talking about like that Roquan mold, a guy who could play, probably drop into the secondary if he needed to. I don't think that there's, he's got that kind of speed. He can play nickel. There's no doubt in my mind that he could, kind of get out there and just kind of roam. Allow him to make plays, use his athleticism. He's a super smart kid. We all know that. But I think that he's a guy who could, be very advantageous for Georgia there. And like you said, the speed, my God, just at your cornerback position, returning all the speed you did there. You mentioned the outside linebackers. Yeah, let the hog mollies stuff them up the middle and, rock and roll. I think it's going to be fun to watch.
Don't forget that Nakobe Dean covered Clyde Edwards-Helaire in that LSU offense on an inside slant and broke with the pass in open space. That's a first-round NFL pick and a throw from a first overall NFL pick Heisman winner. I mean, Nakobe Dean is something special. And if you can say that about Nakobe and Tyreek Stevenson, Jordan Davis looks great with some of the weight that looks like that he has shed. If you see that from Lewis Seen, who's apparently a headhunter in practice, you got a lot of NFL dudes on that defense, and it may go to the 3 deep at this point.
I agree with you 100%. One of the questions we had come in was from UG Alum 95 on Twitter, and he asked about that right tackle situation from the scrimmage. It says, what do you know about Owen Condon, and does Tate Ratledge actually have a shot at winning the job? And that was one of the standout. We mentioned last week on the show that we were hearing about Owen Condon. Well, we mentioned, Coach Donna mentioned it, and sure enough, by the end of the week, that had been proven out. And then in the scrimmage, he's a starter. And when we asked Jake, hey, Jake, what's your first takeaway? It's like, hey, look, Owen Condon is the right tackle. But I think the main question there, without rehashing who Owen is and talking about how great that story is for a guy who's, had the knee injury and then the torn labrum last November, can someone catch him? And I think that is a very interesting question. We've heard about Tate Ratledge there. We've heard about Xavier Truss. You've got Warren McClendon, who, when going into spring, I think Warren McClendon was your right tackle. So I'll open up to you guys. Can anybody catch Owen Condon at right tackle?
Yes, I think so. Now, I don't know who. I'm not going to go out on a limb and say which one of those guys.
Oh, you big coward.
But there's just so much talent there. There's just so many guys.
You're taking the field. Wow. Brave.
I'm taking the field. That's a safe bet always, man. Right. Look, Kirby has proven, and I think that you saw this back with Ben Cleveland. You saw it with Cade Mays. They're willing to shake things up. Well, whoever's practicing well that week it's more about that than it is. I think Owen Condon could go through this whole fall camp and be aces. And if week 2 he struggles in the game and has a bad week of practice, I think Xavier Truss could easily, find himself there, or McClendon for that matter. I think that it's not a situation where they're going to stay married to one guy just because, he's the guy that they go with right now. And given the competition, I got to take the field there.
I think you have to kind of look at a broader perspective of who can thrive alone, isolated on that right side. Because I think there's a chance that Georgia's lack of depth at tight end makes Todd Monken want to go with more receivers. Because, what we're hearing is that Darnell Washington is very raw and may not quite be ready yet. What we're hearing is that Trey McKitty, he might be fine, but, McKitty's a little undersized anyway for a lot of tight ends in the SEC. So, to me, you're not going to have as much blocking help at tight end, especially on the right side, depending on how they're going to do that. You may have tight ends split out wide and really spread this out. I think the form of offense is going to be predicated on how confident Georgia is in tight ends, combined with how much help is needed at that right tackle spot. So if Condon can handle it on his own, we'll see. This is couching too. I'm doing just like Jake, taking the field. But I think that the blocking area concern from right tackle to tight end may dictate the entire offense, which, I don't know if that's the best place to be either.
You got some real risk takers on your staff here, Roddy, taking the field again.
I'm hoping to get some good food when I go out to Clash to eat, and I don't know, maybe not. Big coward.
Now I will say that's good news though, right? Yeah. I mean, the fact that you've got so many guys in the mix there, that's huge for me. We've talked a lot about the good stuff. I think it's time that we touched on something that's a little questionable in the notes.
You stole my transition, because when Dayne said tight ends, I'm like, oh yeah. Oh crap, we got to talk about that. So before we talk about some of the bad stuff, though, I want to talk about some good things that have popped up real quick. Our friends at Aaron Overhead Doors have expanded their service area. So now it's a much bigger service area. So, hey, if you have any garage door issues that you need fixed, and trust me, there's a lot. This rain has caused a ton of them. Their service area has gotten bigger and bigger. We mentioned a few weeks ago, they actually took care of somebody like in North Carolina. So we know that if you reach out to them and you're a Georgia fan, remember you get 10% off. But they really are doing a great job on servicing. It's not always about installing a new garage door. It's not always about new construction, stuff like that. But these guys are doing great jobs when it comes to fixing. Now, I can say fixing a garage door is tough, because I've actually been on service calls. My older brother did it for years. I've seen the results of people trying to fix a garage door by themselves. And you take a $200 repair and you make it a $2,000 repair, just like trying to fix your own plumbing sometimes, or fix your own wiring. If you're trying to deal with those springs on a garage door, you can kill yourself. The torque on those things is unreal. So just be very careful when you're doing any garage door stuff. If your garage door is broken, or you have the lifter or anything like that is messed up, call our friends at Aaron Overhead Doors. They'll fix it. And always remember that the service professionals out there are not contractors. These are actually employees. So they're not subcontractors, not some guy who was, up until 15 minutes ago was working as a plumber, or was working as a yard maintenance guy. This is a true professional who's all have background checks, and they're certified. There's actually science and certification that goes into this. So they're certified to do commercial work as well. So if you need commercial work done, check out our friends at Aaron Overhead Doors. And Ryan Lucia, huge Georgia fan, so much so that if you need service, he will knock off 10% if you're a Georgia fan. Even if you're not, claim that you are. Don't tell Ryan I said that.
Alvin Todd in the YouTube chat says he has Aaron Overhead Doors coming out tomorrow to repair two of his garage door openers.
Tell him to do the 10%. No, but I appreciate the shout out there. Areas of concern. So we talked about some of the positive things. O-line, there's a question mark there. Georgia's interior offensive line looks phenomenal. Give me Justin Schaefer, give me Trey Hill, give me Ben Cleveland, backed up by Warren Erickson, who started in that Sugar Bowl game. Give me a Clay Webb, 5-star guy who can get in there. Give me a Cedric Van Pran, a lot of talented guys there pushing for those spots. Jamari Sawyer out at left tackle. I have every confidence in the world about Jamari Sawyer working tackle. People might think he's a little undersized. Yeah, try getting around him. Have fun with that. Right side, a little more questionable. Owen Condon locking things down over there. I don't know that Owen Condon will be caught by the first game. I think Owen Condon is your starter against Arkansas. I will go out on a limb there and say I have faith in the young man, unlike Jake. Let's go back to the areas of concern. Tight ends are kind of an area of concern. Georgia's secondary, we talked about how good they were, but a lot of those guys were kind of banged up and were held out. So it's very good that secondary is kind of deep. We did not hear a lot of passes to the wide receivers, not any 40, 50-yard long bomb passes that were completed. There was a long one thrown. It was out of bounds. They probably would have gone to the replay as to whether or not George Pickens was inbound or not. They did throw some passes, and apparently George had a great one in the end zone in the red zone situation. But again, we're not hearing a lot about the passing game. We're not hearing a lot about the tight ends. And the running backs did really well. So who's not tackling those guys? Dane, give me your areas of concern.
I mean, to me, tight end is the same area of concern that Georgia's really had for 2 years. Ever since Isaac Nauta left early, I think it's a spot that the offense, the team really wasn't prepared for it. That's why Eli Wolf had to come in, and Charlie Warner was fine. He was very productive. But, you're hoping that Darnell Washington turns into a tight end that can really be a difference maker. And in these spread offenses, if you can get him matched up on a guy from the secondary, eventually you're going to love that. But he's fresh out of high school, and he played in a state that doesn't necessarily have the same quality of athletes as a Florida or a Georgia or Louisiana or Texas, and so you kind of have some concerns about when he could be ready. And he had a little minor knee surgery in the offseason, so there's that to come back from as well. I still have some concern at receiver, simply because these are going to be a lot of freshmen thrust into a spot to make some plays. And Matt Landers is out there, Trey Blunt's out there, but look, it's piss or get off the pot time, right, for a couple of these guys. And they've been here long enough. They should know what they're doing. And if they don't make the most of, I'd say, the next 2 to 3 weeks, they're going to find themselves sitting behind some true freshmen. And I would say after that, you're probably finding yourself a graduate transfer or in the transfer portal at some point.
All right, don't forget Tommy Bush.
Sure. See, for me, I think that stuff works itself out. I think because you've got the depth there. I think that you've got enough talented players working at the wide receiver position that you'll be able to patch it together. You've got George Pickens. Everything else is gravy from there, right? Darnell Washington, I think he's going to be fine down the stretch over the course of the year. He'll gain confidence. He'll get better. He'll learn how to utilize that big body. Turn on some Antonio Gates film and let him kind of do that. But for me, the biggest concern, I know a lot of people have mentioned this as well, and I think it's got to be your place kicker. I think that you've got to figure out what you're going to do there, because it sounded like from the notes that there was a lot of good and there was a lot of bad, and I think that people are just so used to taking that position for granted, given what Rodrigo brought to it. The automatic touchbacks and the clutch field goals from under 45. Then you hear, well, some of them made it out of the end zone, some were at the 10. Maybe they had a good long kick, but the trajectory wasn't right. That's got to be concerning for you, because you've got a true freshman battling in that position, and then Jake Camarda, who's been a hell of a punter for you, but does he end up having to take that role on? I think it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. And I know that that's one that people have had a lot of concerns about, because there's probably not there certainly is not, I don't think in football, a more individualized position than place kicker. And, I think that we've seen over the years, place kickers can be head cases. So you've got to make sure that you got a guy in there who is confident, who feels like he can do it every time. And, I don't write off Georgia's chances of being able to do that. I think that certainly, what we heard about Zirkle coming out of high school points that way. Jake Camarda, I think, has proven himself over the years as a fantastic punter and a guy who was kicking very well for field goals in high school as well. But I think that that's got to be an area of concern, because it's just been such a given for so long.
I will go with the I do like that. I want to point out that we heard good things about the punting, So when we were actually able to speak to Jake Camarda yesterday, he didn't talk about it, but for our insider note said that he boomed some punts. And we know he's capable of that. He had some inconsistencies earlier, but seemed to get better and better as the year progressed. Good to hear that he was consistent the other day and that they actually did hit some of those field goals. I guess for me was some of the stuff I heard about. Again, this is ticky-tacky little stuff. And this is when Kirby Smart came out and said, oh, everything was sloppy. Now, you knew that Kirby Smart was going to come out and say, we're terrible. First scrimmage of the year, there's no way it could go the way he wants it to. No injuries was his most important thing. And apparently there weren't any real injuries of note. Some guys got dinged up a little bit, but some guys were held out for, precautionary issues, but no real injuries. So that was good. But, of course, Kirby's first thing is that we were sloppy. One of the things I heard that what they remember it may have been a little sloppy over was call out the punt team, and there's one guy who's not out, who runs out on the field late, or they were doing so much interchanging. So you had your second string defense out there, and then one guy, if you want to put a third stringer out there, he runs out there, then you bring them off, but they're supposed to stay for the punt return team. And that guy gets kind of confused as where he's at. So it's really kind of tough. They're trying to do so much that you had some issues there. But again, that's all, you're dealing with a new position coach, and Scott Cochran running the special teams. But there are a few minor issues there with guys, who's on that team, who's not. That's all stuff that can be worked out. I agree with you guys 100% when it comes to what Georgia can do about the tight end situation. I'm still looking for Fitzpatrick to kind of show up and be what we saw in high school. I would love to see Ryland go get out there and show what he can do. Trey McKitties should have that instant impact, but he's, again, a little bit smaller than we thought. I really would like to I'm looking forward to the next scrimmage, and hopefully we hear that, again, it's a catch-22, because if you hear that Georgia's completing a lot of long passes, like, oh, man, the secondary is getting scorched. But if they're not completing long passes, then you're like, well, Georgia's not going to be able to do it against anybody. So it's that horrible give and take with one side does well, the other side does badly. And Kirby mentioned that. He's like, I know you guys want me to talk about who did well, but that means that somebody did poorly. And so he didn't want to give up that ghost. That's why we had he didn't want to give up that list. So that's why we actually had some, top performers, and areas of concern at UGASports.com from the people that observed it. Any other kind of areas that stick out to you guys? Because to me, like I said, it was just the sloppiness, and I don't want to turn this into a negative. Coach Dunn gives us grief. He says you guys only want to focus on the negative, but I don't want to blow a bunch of smoke and say, oh yeah, this team is unstoppable. I mean, there are concerns. Did we hit on everything, or is there something else you guys want to bring up?
I think that looking at it, it sounds to me like the defense is about where you would expect it to be. They're a little bit banged up, but they've returned so much experience that it feels like that's going to be an area of strength. There's really just no reason that it shouldn't be, right? I still think that there's just a lot of question marks on offense. I think that, finding and nailing down this offensive line rotation, finding that number 2 quarterback, possibly even your number 1 quarterback, still working with these receivers. We mentioned tight end. Is it Zamir's job? Does he split with James Cook? Where does Kenny McIntosh factor into this? I just think that there's a ton of unanswered questions over there. So I don't mean to say that negatively. I don't see it as
that's fair. That's very fair.
Yeah, I don't see it as a negative necessarily, but I think that the defense is what you expect. I think that the offense still has questions to answer, and that's kind of the big takeaway, after a full week in a scrimmage.
I do think we should praise the conditioning of the team, especially considering how wonky this year has been. I mean, we all remarked about how Jermaine Johnson looks more bulky. We remarked about how Jamari Sawyer has cut some bad weight, and then we heard Owen Condon cut 3% body fat. The maturity of the team to kind of individually handle those things until they got back in workouts in the summer. I mean, that's really good. That's a great sign for what they're trying to do this season, because I promise you that if in those March, April, May months, if they were kind of slacking off then, it would still be showing now.
Yep.
We got a question here over at UGASports.com that I think plays real well into this, and I'm interested in both of you guys' take on it. Dog of Ages wants to know, what do you think's missing from this year's team?
I'm sorry, what do you think is missing?
Yeah, what do you think is missing from this year's team? Is there an area you point to? Obviously, we've talked about points of concern, but is there something where you say, yeah, they may just not get there on that?
Oh, that is a good question. And so one of those things that you always find out about, 2 months after the season. Well, actually, 3 months after the season's over, when you get those spring interviews and the team came up just short in, say, the SEC championship game or the title game or something like that. And you're talking to the guys, they go, yeah, we're fixing this. You're like, fixing that? They go, yeah, it was a problem last year. Oh, well, we didn't know that. So I won't say too late, but you don't find out until after the fact, and the hindsight's 2020. I guess for me, what would be missing right now, I would kind of say that that leadership quality on the offense. Again, this is a guess, an absolute guess, simply because you look at those 3 years of Jake Fromm, being the name over there, Andrew Thomas being the guy over there that kind of follow me. I know what I'm doing, holding guys to account. And I'm not saying that's not being done, but if I had to guess, when you're still trying to decide between QB1, QB1A, QB1B, whose team is this? Who kind of leads it that way? Some of the guys we point out that having the best upside on the offense are very young. We talk about, your left tackle lots of times is one of the guys who leads that. The center kind of leads that. Trey Hill's got to step into that. He talked about having to become vocal. He's never been comfortable with that. You've known him for years. He's not a loud guy. Jamari Sawyer trying to be leader. He's the left tackle for the first time. No tight end that I know of is really stepping up and taking the lead there. Your wide receivers, pretty much a young group. The older guys haven't had as big of an impact. Is everybody going to rally around Matt Landers or Tommy Bush or Trey Blunt? Maybe they're holding them account. I don't know, but I just kind of wonder who's that voice with a new offensive coordinator, new offensive line coach. Where's the direction? And we want them to have that sense of purpose that, Georgia had a offense last year that didn't produce those explosive plays. Coach Monken wants one, every 8 plays? He wants something to be 15 to 20 yards plus. So where's that identity? So that again, that's just my guess as to what might be missing. It's speculative, but I'd feel better if I was a Georgia fan knowing that, this is Jamie Newman's team. This is Jamari Hill's team. This is Trey Hill's team. Ben Cleveland is running roughshod over everybody. I feel better knowing that than not knowing.
I don't know how anybody could feel good after listening to that list you just rattled off of. I mean, that was a damning indictment. I felt.
I'm just worried about Coach Doddin. So leave alone.
For me, and like I said, I don't think there's a lot of concerns about the defense. I think that you're returning so many guys, so much experience there. The one thing that I think has been missing from this Georgia defense and is missing until proven otherwise is their ability to affect the quarterback and get those all-important sacks. I think that given the amount of talent that you've got there at that outside linebacker spot and up front, I think the ability for them to get in and penetrate really cause that havoc that they keep talking about. I think that that's something that it feels like it's missing. Maybe it'll be, apparent game 1, but until they get out there and prove it, I still have some question marks about their abilities there.
Yeah, I think on that defensive line, you're looking for someone to be just overwhelmingly dominant. And most teams don't have that. Let's just be honest. Sure. Most teams don't have a Jadeveon Clowney or Myles Garrett or just one of those guys that you have to put 2 guys on or have to base your entire game plan on blocking. Georgia doesn't have that. Malik Herring creates a lot of havoc on the inside. It doesn't result in sacks necessarily, but that may open up for linebackers to come in, or we saw Tyreek Stevenson get some sacks late in the season where defensive guys can come down. The funny thing is I actually see that same kind of situation at running back. I don't think Georgia has an overwhelmingly dominant running back. There's no Todd Gurley or Nick Chubb in that backfield, but I think it's going to be massively productive. But I do not see a running back on the team that would be a first-round pick. I know that's hard. That's really high standards at this point because you don't see that in the NFL very much anymore. But, Georgia is running back you. And, I think right now that's going to be more of a committee deal than one dominant force, even like we saw with DeAndre Swift.
Well, and, you mentioned, Dane, to some of those talented running backs. I mean, I don't know right now, and I'm not saying that these guys can't get to the level, but we certainly don't have the body of work from any of these guys to say, is this guy even a DeAndre Swift? A guy who was able to get in and carry the load like that. Is there a 1,000-yard back on this team? I think so. I mean, I do think Zamir can get there. I think that he's a guy who can push that. But, again, is it missing? Yeah, I would say so until proven otherwise.
Good point. Speaking of the 1,000-yard back thing, I don't think James Cook is going to be your 1,000-yard back just running the ball. But I think when you give him those all-purpose yards, I think he's going to put up some pretty big numbers. You mentioned that the defensive front. I do want to give out some of our behind the paywall scoop here. We were talking about the 2 deep on the defensive front. So the first team defensive front as of last Friday, that may have changed after the scrimmage and practices this week, but the first team was Jordan Davis, Malik Herring, and Trayvon Walker. So that's your three on the defensive front right out. That's pretty legit. Trayvon Walker, as we talk about, fastest lighting. Malik Herring, one of the highest rated guys according to Pro Football Focus, and Jordan Davis, who's had some, a lot of all SEC talk. Behind these three, you have Julian Rochester, who's going into his fifth year. Julian could get a sixth year, couldn't he?
Yes.
Yeah. Because this year doesn't count. So Julian could come back and get that master's degree. But Julian Rochester.
He's going to be a tenure track professor by the time he leaves.
So Julian Rochester, Devontae Wyatt, and Jalen Carter. Again, we saw him going up against Trey Hill. By the way, that video that we have at UGASports.com on our YouTube page, that video was not supposed to get out. That was leaked, and somebody got in trouble for that. But we have it on our YouTube page. Be sure to subscribe to the UGA Sports YouTube page. If you're watching this right now on YouTube, then hit not only subscribe, but hit that little bell so that you're notified when we go live or when we have to put up a new video. So Julian Rochester, Devontae Wyatt, Jalen Carter, and Tramel Walther. So kind of Jalen Carter / Tramel Walther. So that's your first and second team when it comes to the defensive line. The two deep at wide receiver, again, this was kind of an area of concern, but also, when Jake, you talk about it being deep, first team is, of course, George Pickett's, Demetrius Robertson, and Kyrus Jackson. Kyrus Jackson was called out after singled out after the in Todd Monken's comments, and then Kirby Smart talking about, guys who've done well. We know that George Pickens is going to be big. We know that Demetrius Robertson was the number one athlete in the nation at one point, and Kyrus Jackson turning heads. Behind them, though, Matt Landers, Jermaine Burton, Tommy Bush, and Marcus Roseman. So I thought two freshmen working in the two deep is quite interesting, but hope to see something big out of Matt Landers and Tommy Bush.
Well, I want to talk about something we never talk about because people aren't normally that interested, but it jumped off the page to me. Run over that third team offensive line for me, would you?
Oh yeah, it's good. Third team offensive line.
You got Cedric Van Pran at center.
Well, yeah. A recovering Broderick Jones. Now, Broderick went out and tried to do a snap, and I've heard he had an issue with his ankle. I've also heard he had an issue with his knee. He went in, took one snap, came back out. And this is not a scrimmage. This is earlier in the year. But apparently he's fine, or at least he's back. He's back to scrimmaging. So he was in the scrimmage. He was at left tackle. So, Jake, I'm going to need you to look up the sizes on these guys. But Broderick Jones, one of the biggest guys out there. Next to him was Willock, Devin Willock, an absolute monster at left guard. Then you had Cedric Van Pran, who the small guy is also kind of a beast. Then you had Chad Lindbergh, the tall guy from Texas, working at right guard, and then Tate Ratledge working at right tackle. So what is that? Is that
all right? Hold on.
5 freshmen?
Yes, that is all freshmen. That is a third team all freshman. So your left tackle, 6'6", 300 pounds, coming out of high school, Broderick Jones. Devin Willock coming out at, he was 6'7", 350. That's pretty good.
As you look up the others, I was told that the field was tilting to the left. Those guys out there.
Yeah, so your small guy is Cedric at 6'4", 285.
Midget.
Obviously. You got Chad Lindbergh, who I think people forget how gigantic Chad Lindbergh is. But I had a chance to see him in Classic City Eats not too long ago. 6'6", 300 at your guard spot. And then 6'5", 295, Tate Ratledge at your right tackle spot. So not lacking for.
Don't forget Austin Blasky, another guy, freshman out there, who's the state wrestling champ. He's actually worked some third string too. So I'm just saying that at one point that was the third string offensive line of that scrimmage. But since then, Blasky's been out there. a lot of guys get moved around, in and out. So.
And Roddy, I'll put it this way. I just did a film review of Arkansas with Brent Rollins on our series of reviewing the best returnees for Georgia's opponents. 4 or 5 of Georgia's third team that you just mentioned would start for Arkansas right now for Sam Pittman. I feel really confident in saying that.
I agree. And actually in our super secret practice notes, 27 cents a day at UGASports.com, we mentioned the fact that there are a lot of teams that would love to have those guys as a starting lineup. So that's quite impressive. So again, if I think Jake gets paid every time he says depth. I think it's a quarter or something, but he's pounding it out. Speaking of pound, I want to mention our friends at Academia Brewing Company. They are doing a deal with the Athens Area Humane Society. Okay, now this kind of neat. It's called a Bark and Brew. You pay $20 and you get a 6-pack of Athens beers because there's a bunch of other breweries doing this too. Admission to the event, all these goodies from the Athens Area Humane Society and the breweries. The event is September 12th. So coming up pretty quick, but you do not want to wait until then to get your tickets. Jump into the Bark and Brew, sponsored in part by our friends at Academia Brewing Company. They're always doing stuff like this. They're doing outreach. Our buddy Owen Ogletree tipped us off to that. The guy that runs Classic City Brew Fest. A lot of new beers out of Academia. They had the 3 Shades of Black, which is a chocolate milk porter. I can't wait to have that. I had a friend in town this past weekend who went out and tried their pineapple shipwreck, Berliner Weiss. And he said, this is a beer you can just drink all day. He's just absolutely raved about it. So when you get a chance, check out the 3 Shades of Black, the pineapple shipwreck, and some of the other great beers they have out there. Of course, Hopperdesiac, an absolute favorite. Alias was also one of my favorites. So, and they have a free email newsletter that you can sign up for, so they'll let you know when all their new beers come in. So check out our friends at Academia Brewing Company. And before we get to any of the other questions, I also want to mention a special that they have out at Athens Ford, because that September 12th thing reminded me, through September 8th, i.e. this coming weekend. If you go out to Athens Ford, and again, if you don't want to go out there, you just want to have them walk around cars with a FaceTime or Skype or Zoom call or whatever, they'll do that and show you the vehicles. And then send it out to your house, let you test drive it, then pick it up, do all your paperwork online, do all your financing online, do your trade-in online. You don't even have to walk into the place. But if you do go out there and are looking around, or you need a vehicle, I can tell you about all their deals, but this is kind of one I want to focus on because I think this could help a lot of people. They have 0% APR financing for 36 months for qualified buyers on all eligible Ford certified pre-owned vehicles. Now, I've done the Ford certified pre-owned experience. I got a Explorer certified pre-owned. It felt brand new. It looks brand new. It still looks brand new. It still looks phenomenal. I didn't pay the cost of having a brand new Ford Explorer. I got it a heck of a lot cheaper than that. Usually, though, when we talk about these 0% for 4 months, or 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, we've seen 0% financing for 84 months. They have a 0% APR financing for 36 months, for 3 years, on a Ford certified pre-owned vehicle. So if you're like, look, I don't want to buy a new car, I want to get a good deal on a pre-owned vehicle, a used vehicle. Lifetime powertrain warranty, 100+ point inspection on all their certified pre-owned, plus 0% financing for qualified buyers for 36 months. Again, that's through the 8th of September. So go in there this week, let them know we sent you, and check out our friends at Athens Ford. Cannot tell you how much they mean to us. And hopefully you will go out and take advantage of that 3 year 0% financing deal. Big fans of that. Jake, hit us up with some questions if we got any.
Hey, Jake, I have a question for you, if I can.
Right.
No. That's not what we asked.
Yeah, let's do it.
I'm breaking it up. I woke up this morning with my timeline filled with high school juniors with a lot of cool edits from different places. Why was midnight significant in recruiting?
Yeah, so midnight, September 1st, as soon as the clock flips over, 2022 prospects can be contacted unlimitedly by staffs. They don't have to do the whole workaround of having the kids reach out to them or have the coach reach out to the kid, and then the kid gets in touch with the coach. They can go directly to the kid now. And as you saw, we've had a running thread over at UGASports, kind of identifying all the offers that have gone out so far that we've been able to track. Georgia, after some of the nation's best, as you would expect, we did an article over the last couple of weeks where we're looking at in-state and out-of-state targets. Got one more in that series to check out for sure. But, I got to tell people what you need to be excited about, in my opinion, is this 22 defensive line class in state. I think that it is a class that rivals, what we saw. And given, some of these guys did not pan out, but, the Julian Rochester, Michael Carter, David Marshall, for me, it's the best defensive line class that's come through Georgia since that time. You're talking about Tyree West at Tifton. You got Michael Williams down at Hardaway in Columbus, Horace Lockett over at Westlake. Just you don't run into these big freaks that often. So I think that it's a really exciting time for Georgia to be recruiting on the defensive line going into next year for sure.
Hey guys, a little bit of breaking news here that I thought was kind of interesting. UCF says they have 10 players who have opted out for the 2020 season.
Interesting.
That's a lot.
Okay.
I mean, if you told me it includes defensive back Tay Gowan and quarterback Daryl Mack, would not be stunned to hear names like that, but 8 more. So quite interesting. And again, I don't want to have, like I said, I don't want to do the COVID show. Sick of talking about the COVID stuff. Other than, again, anybody that follows me on social media knows I've been very positive about it, just because I think that this can be done. And people say, well, you have a financial interest in this. Well, actually, the members at UGASports.com, the membership has been phenomenal. We're not hurting. That's why we keep trying to bring up companies that we can help out. But I've been very positive. I mean, very optimistic this can happen. I'm trying to get my hopes up, but I just think it can be done if we are all willing to sacrifice a little and do what it takes to get there. But that just, am I the only one think that's crazy? UCF, if you told me Alabama had 10, you've seen what's happened to LSU, I would believe it. But what am I missing? Apparently, I'm not a big enough UCF fan to know what's going on down there, how many players they got. But does 10 seem a bit excessive?
To a degree, but I think that if you're talking about a situation with them, I mean, it's possible perhaps that they're looking around, some of those guys are looking around like LSU and saying, maybe this just ain't the year. And if I get an extra year of eligibility, I get to focus and do my classes and not have to worry about it. I could see that being the case. I'm not saying that's what it is. I don't have any inside information on that, but I could see that being for those guys saying, look, we don't have the team to win it this year. We're not going to put it together. Why would I risk being hurt when I could, have a freebie and, just focus on my studies for a little bit. So possible, I guess.
I see what you did there, Jake, pairing those national champions, LSU and UCF together.
That's right. That's right.
Hey, if you see LSU do it, you feel like that's what the national championship teams do, then maybe do the same. I don't know. I mean, it could be. I think Jake brings up a great point, though. A lot of kids are like, well, this year doesn't count, so I can focus on something else. So,
and I don't know if this matters, but Orlando was hit very hard at the beginning of COVID, and so if there was some family related stuff for some of the local Florida kids, I don't know. I haven't seen the information, but yeah, I did see the running back from Memphis that I think he had 4 family members die. Some I think was COVID related. Some may have been other factors involved as well. But like some of these personal things are going to hit guys, and when it comes time to really launch, some of them may back out. And what do they say in recruiting? Respect my decision. I think all you can do is that if someone has fear that this is not the right thing for them at this time, you just kind of have to respect that decision and wish them the best.
I think you're right. I think we're not there yet. I'm hopeful, but I'm not getting my hopes up just because I'd rather be a little pessimistic about human nature
You can't be hurt again. I understand.
Yeah, I can't.
Sensitive place.
I just can't take it. I talked to some of our publishers at the other sites, in the Pac-12 and the Big Ten, and the atmosphere amongst the fan bases there. To know, I mean, again, it's not that everything's done. It's just that, having to wait. They were so excited about the season, and then it's been moved back to January or February, and it's just absolutely killing those fans. And I don't want to be like, oh yeah, we're playing in 25 days, we got this, and then all of a sudden find out we're not. And I just nope, won't let myself believe. Is that it for the questions, Jake?
Well, yeah, I was going to say we did get some questions today, but most of them were for Coach Don, and as you might imagine, no one cares what we have to think. So we'll save those for Coach for next week when he gets back.
Yeah, everybody, if you would give a quick prayer for the Donner family. Hopefully, it's just a minor issue, but you can never know with some of this stuff. So, Coach, you are in our thoughts and prayers, as is Mary. So we're sending her all the good vibes we can. Everybody else, tune in next Tuesday. There should be another scrimmage before then, so hopefully we'll have some more scrimmage notes we will be able to share with you. Of course, if
high school football to talk about.
That's right. So Jake will be out on the road, and Jake might actually have some updates for us on recruiting if he actually gets off his duff and does some work.
I think you may have missed the one I wrote today, in fact. So.
No.
Yeah.
So Jake will have a ton of recruiting updates. We've got stuff coming from Patrick Garbin. We have stuff coming from Brent Rawls. We have stuff from Trent coming in. We have stuff from Dayne coming in. Even Sept might write something. You just never know who's going to put up content at UGASports.com. It's only 27 cents a day. Check it out. And stick around. Be sure to stick around next Tuesday at noon. We will have a lot more to talk about. We'll see you then.